Hey everybody, Joe Pellegrino Jr. here from Robbins Pellegrino, a business brokerage firm. On today's recording, we did a little industry spotlight. We took a deep dive into the HVAC industry, which is a hot commodity right now. We talked a little bit about why that is, why demand is so high, and what you as a HVAC business owner can do about it, and whether or not this is the time to sell or whether the time is to wait. You're not going to want to miss it. A lot of really, really good stuff here, including some really great industry stats. We'll see you there. Alrighty, so today we're talking about the HVAC industry, which is a highly coveted, highly in demand industry, and it's going to be super interesting to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this one. But Chandler, why don't you go ahead and give us a high level look at the HVAC services industry and kind of kick the conversation off that way?
Sure. It's a growing industry, which makes it an attractive industry. And right now you've got individual first-time business owners going after these opportunities. You've got PE firms going after it. You've got kind of some of the middle ground regional groups that are trying to acquire and grow. So you've really just got different types of buyers, very attractive to HVAC right now. With that, it's semi-recession proof, right? So everyone's hot or cold all the time. So there's that kind of is a big benefit. Then it also follows the construction landscape, right? So right now construction is still hot, and as that goes, so does kind of HVAC, right? With new construction, you've got to do that as well. So high level, very attractive right now. You've got I would say right now it's saturated with PE firms coming in. So the good news there is they often attract a higher dollar volume and value for your business. There's just some additional due diligence work that you as the business owner need to do if you own an HVAC to make you attractive to that type of buyer.
So when you say it's sort of saturated from the PE firm, can you give a little bit more on that?
Sure. I mean, PE firms, they look at all different businesses, different industries, and they kind of go after different sectors depending on what's going on. And right now, over the last 12, 14 months, HVAC seems to be one they've picked up. So they've identified that kind of across the board as HVAC is really attractive right now. It's growing. You've got some, even if if you currently own an HVAC company, you might be aging out potentially. So the age of ownership in HVAC right now, if you dive into the research, you've got people kind of hitting retirement age, and PE firms find it a good opportunity to just kind of collect and kind of build their larger group. So yeah, again, they're paying a healthy multiple for the business, which is nice. But then there's some work to be done there in terms of what you need to do to prepare for that, because they look at it a little bit different than maybe the typical purchaser.
Do you find that it's more a case of HVAC is just really a great thing to add to their portfolio, or do you see like consolidation happening? Because obviously the HVAC industry is extremely fragmented.
Yeah, so there's opportunities. So the PE firms are seeing opportunity. You've got there's a few key big players nationally, and then everybody else, it's either your mom and pop or your uncle or a small regional one or someone that's operating in one city, and you've just got a slew of different ones. So there's an opportunity to go collect 5 or 10 in Houston and collect 2 or 3 in Southwest, Florida or whatever, and you can start growing market shares. They're taking market shares, right? So I've got 3 or 4 clients right now, PE firms that are saying, hey, Chandler, go attack Houston, Dallas, Naples, Atlanta, and find me not one HVAC company, but 2 or 3 with this set of EBITDA, so then they can kind of claim that market, right? And then as additional HVAC owners in that market reach retirement or see what they're doing, they can grab them as they go. So there's kind of a long-term plan
Right.
for most of these guys, right? They're not going after just one in one isolated city or market, but going after the ability to grab up multiple ones.
Yeah. One of the things that you said a little bit earlier is that, you wouldn't necessarily consider HVAC recession proof, more recession resistant. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Those are my thoughts. So, I mean, I think it's more resistant than most. I think it's there are money to be made even in a recession, right? Because here's the deal. I live in Florida, and I don't care if we're in a recession or not. If it's 95 degrees in my HVAC breaks at my house, I'm still calling them. I'm not making the call because my sales are down in my business a little bit. But overall, if you look at it kind of high level, if construction slows down, if the overall economy is slower, you've got less new builds, you've got less new commercial business, you've got kind of less. You're keeping your current residential clients, you're keeping your commercial clients that you have existing, but overall growth slows down.
So it's really about it's more the growth factor of new construction, you know, what that sort of looks like. And obviously, from that perspective in Florida, we're still, we're still booming, especially in certain areas like Southwest Florida. I mean, it's just, that's, where I'm based, obviously here in Naples. And it's just, I mean, the amount of things that are being built down here and the backlog, there's just so much going on. And obviously, HVAC is one of the key pieces of new builds. I mean, especially in Florida, it's in no way, shape, or form considered a luxury, right? I mean, HVAC is not even just a necessity. It's like the most basic of needs in Florida. Most of these HVAC companies have emergency services where when your AC breaks, they can have somebody out within 12 hours, maybe even less. Because we have, as a society, we've conditioned ourselves not to be able to live without conditioning, whether that's heating or cooling. And especially here in Florida, it is, I mean, virtually impossible to live without it. Our AC broke down, about 2 years ago, and we went like 6 hours without it, but it was in the dead of the summer, and it was like the worst 6 hours ever. I mean, it's not livable. I would pay anything to get out of that.
Right, right. And people do, and therefore that's why it's still a strong industry. I don't see it going anywhere. I mean, I think the projected growth industry-wise for the next 10, 15 years is an average of 6%, right? So it's still trending. I mean, when I was young and our AC would go out, I think we were on a first name basis with our tech because it was the same tech over and over again. And we really, really liked Mr. Andy when he came and fixed our AC.
Yeah, one of the interesting stats that we pulled up before we jumped into this recording is that in the state of Florida, there are over 11,000 HVAC businesses as of the end of 2023, which represents 8.1% of all U.S. HVAC businesses, which is obviously a higher proportion than our 2% of the United States from a geography perspective. So that's, I mean, there's all when you think about fragmenting, right? And you think about how many there really are. Why do you think it is that the industry is so fragmented already?
Why? Because some industries do a really good job of coming together, and some are just kind of built by the nature of the business to be kind of on an island, right? And this requires a license that someone has to have, and therefore it's that one individual, and it can be that one individual and a small office staff, or it can be that individual with multiple techs. And then they really grow. So you can do it as kind of a mom and pop, and you can just do what you can handle, or you can grow that business to be something a little bit more, larger. And I think that's ultimately what keeps it fragmented, because it's not some overarching. It just lends itself to be kind of a bunch of people on an island, and I think people are seeing that. Potential buyers are seeing that and saying, "Hey, what's the opportunity to bring those islands together, right, and make larger conglomerates?"
So, we've established that the demand is definitely high for this type of business. There's different buyer profiles, whether it be private equity, whether it be consolidating efforts, whether it be individuals, regardless. Is your position generally that if I'm a HVAC owner, a business owner that's an HVAC company, now is the time to sell?
Absolutely. I mean, you're seeing multiples right now that we haven't seen in quite some time in the industry. You've, again, speaking to the PE firms, they will pay a higher price, but it's driven all of it up because now even the individual owner or the single business owner that might be trying to buy his competition, or maybe a first time business owner, is having to compete with the PE firms. So it's raising everyone's going to pay a little bit more. PE firms are going to pay the most, but everyone is willing to pay more just to kind of stay in the race, right? So it's an excellent time to sell, for sure.
What kind of multiples are we talking about?
Oh, and everybody always asks me that question. So anyway, it just depends on your volume of revenue. But a good rule of thumb is 3.5 to 5.5. And again, that's based off your revenue, your market, size, and all of that. But
hmm and generally, you're finding that the PE firms are coming in with offers that are closer to the fours and fives than the threes.
generally, again, they're also picky, right? So here's what I need everyone to hear if you own an HVAC company. I did not just tell you that you're going to get a 4 or 5 multiple offer on your business just because PE firms like HVAC. Here's really what's going to happen. If you have a great business where you've got, I say you really need to be closer to that $1 to $2 million in EBITDA, cash flow, what you take home after the end of the year, after all your ad backs, to get those offers. You have to have some size already for a PE firm to really find you attractive. Now, with that said, there are some PE firms that have already attacked different markets. They already have some market presence, and they're looking for add-ons, right? So they'll reduce that EBITDA threshold just so that they can add your business on. So they may have an existing HVAC company in the Houston market that's doing $5 million, and yours is doing 750,000, 500,000. They'll take yours and just add your clients to that larger business. So it's not oh no, I have to be at size, but understand if to get that 4 or 5 multiple, you need to have some serious cash flow for the PE firms at least.
Right.
More general, just looking at all the potential buyers, I'd say cash flow over $500,000 is going to make you really attractive to get a somewhere in the middle to higher multiple than the three. Right, but it's really based off on so much more. That's a very general statement. I want to excite people, but I want you guys to realize that it's very contingent on what your books look like, your sales, the market you're in is also a big driving factor.
For sure. I mean, it's sort of the adage of a business is worth what someone will pay for it, right? That's generally across the board. We just look at the pieces that are that make you a little bit more likely to get a little bit more of a better deal potentially, right? But it's still at the end of the day, a business is worth what someone will pay for it. So,
Right.
um,
And I don't know if we're going to discuss this. This might just be an added bonus, but I do want to, if I was telling some advice for any HVAC owner that's looking to sell in the next 6 months, have a conversation with your CPA, because this industry is notorious for taking somewhat of a smaller salary and a pretty large draw, because you're not planning on selling and you want to, want to mitigate the taxes. If you want to, PE firms hate that, right? So I'm just going to say, if that's what you're going to get, a lower multiple if that's how you're operating the business. So if you have any kind of realistic expectation to sell in the next 6 to 12 months, have a conversation with your CPA, work out a larger officer salary, basically take some hits on your taxes at the end of the year, showing more cash flow business wise than taking a super large owner draw distribution, because PE firms they don't.
yeah, and we talked about the financial side of valuing businesses on our previous recording, but specifically, can you speak to why PE firms hate it when, or it's less attractive to them when an HVAC business owner is taking a higher draw, lower salary?
Sure.
Like
I will,
practice.
yeah, I will try to keep this as simple as possible. But essentially, on your profit and loss statements, your income statements, whatever you want to call them, you've got your sales. Let's say you do $5 million in sales and you make $1 million, just for the sake of the conversation. If you're able to show all of that on that P&L, thus eventually it's probably going to be shown on your taxes, you're going to be able to be valued with that EBITDA number. If you do those same sales, make $5 million, but instead of showing that $1 million in cash flow or EBITDA, you decide to just take a draw, which lowers that $5 million number to, let's say, 4.5. Now that $1 million now looks like 600,000, and there's nowhere for you can just say, well, I took it over here, it's accounted for. You're robbing sales of your business by taking an owner draw, because that's what happens. You can't double dip. You can't take your draw, your 500,000 over here, put it in your bank account, and also count it as sales on the business. You have to take one from the other. So basically, for PE firms, they just don't. There's zero value. They'll try to give you zero value for your owner draw, because they can't say, well, this was an expense to the business and I'll add it back, because it doesn't exist over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tax mechanism for you to pay less. It's not a mechanism to help you sell your business. So if you want to sell your business, you need to kind of just understand you're going to get walloped on your taxes this year, and just understand you're going to get paid more for your business. So it's going to be a net positive. Is kind of, and like I said, anybody that watches this, come on, shoot us an email or text message, and I'll give you a better explanation, more in depth. But that's, in short, they just give zero value to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super. So, what are other things that HVAC business owners could do to position themselves and make themselves a little bit more attractive for a deal?
So that's and
That's
not to
that's the pinnacle,
belabor
right?
a dead horse, that's the biggest one. I think you need to show as much cash flow as possible. With that, I'll go back. If you are HVAC companies kind of fall into, like I've mentioned, that mom and pop kind of threshold, where it may just be a single individual with one or two more techs. They might do $1.5 million, and then a lot of their personal expenses go through the business. That's fine. Again, I'm not the IRS. I'm not worried about it. However, we've got to identify what those expenses are, so that we can add those back. So if you take a bunch of personal stuff out of the business, that's fine, but make sure your CPA or you can help us identify that. If you've got trucks or vans, understand this, because this is a conversation I have with anybody where there's trucks and vans, is if you have a loan on them, you're paying those off at sale. So just kind of have that understanding that this isn't so much affecting valuation, but most people are concerned about what their net gain is after we sell a business, and understand that if you've got $150,000 of trucks and van loans, those have got to be taken care of per closing. So when we're doing that valuation, understand that that's a big piece of it too. So if you want to position yourself, maybe start paying those off, take the depreciation, do your magic, but ultimately lower that so you can take a more,
Yeah. Now, if I'm a mom and pop shop that's doing really really well, but I don't really have a strong brand, is that something that I want to invest in, or is that something I don't really need to worry about?
Great question. Depends on what you want to do. So I'd say you're at if you're at $1.5 million in sales or less, just keep operating a really great business. Keep doing what you're doing. Customer service is really big in this industry. And I think you're okay. If you're wanting to take your 1.5 million to 3, brand's going to be more important. Brand recognition, all of that. No matter how big or small your market is. So it's kind of trying to do some vision planning there, what you're wanting to do with it. If you're wanting to get out in the next 6 or 12 months, you're sitting there at that $1.5 million, $2 million in revenue. I think you're okay as long as you're operating a great business. If you're in that 3, 5, if you're wanting to trend up, then yeah, I think brand recognition and brand presence is important across the board. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something you need to do extra work around. Just to position yourself to sell if you're operating a really good company with good customer service and a good product.
So what I'm hearing you say is that from a buyer perspective, it's not necessarily going to move the needle if you have a really strong and pretty brand.
It can. It can, but not really. So that brand needs to be you need to be at least 10 years old, and you need 10 to 15 years old, I would say. And I would say that you need to kind of show that 85% of your business is because people know your brand. Right. So if there's a direct tie, not granted, where I grew up, in the Panhandle of Florida, there was one regionally strong HVAC company, and everybody saw his vans and knew it. If he were to come to me today and say, Chandler, I want to sell your business, then I'm going to give him a pretty good feedback, for his brand and all of that, in the value there. But it's not something you have to dive in and stress yourself out about if you're not already doing it just to sell.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense because we hear that all the time, right? It's like, well, I want to sell really soon, but should I invest in X and Y and Z? And it's kind of like it's like a chicken or an egg conversation with most of it. But at the end of the day, like with branding specifically, because that's a big one that we hear quite a bit. With branding specifically, like you said, it's not about just having a pretty brand. It's about having a brand that's actually valuable. So you're not going to get a valuable brand in 6 to 12 months. Like it's not going to, you're not going
Right.
to,
Even
it's not
if it
going to,
looks pretty.
right,
Right.
right.
Even if you do a whole rebrand and all your vans, listen, you spend $100,000 and you put nice little, you wrapped all of your vans and trucks and you got pretty business cards. 6 to 12 months doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I agree. Branding is important, but if I was looking at something to do in the next 6 to 12 months, how can you increase the cash flow? Either existing cash flow and you can show it doing some financial work with your CPA, or if you want to make any tweaks in the business, they need to be directly tied to increasing cash flow. And
Mhm.
in a 6 to 12 month range, that really looks like cutting expenses rather than increasing revenue. So you need to look at: are you overstaffed? Are you, all of those things? Are you paying for subscriptions you don't need? Look at how you're operating your business, and
Right.
probably make some changes there that ultimately increase your cash flow. If you're talking 6 to 12 months, everything else is going to naturally take a little bit longer.
Right. Those are the low hanging fruit opportunities we can take. Yeah. And especially with mom and pop business, this applies to industries across the board, right? I mean,
Sure,
a lot of
sure.
times these businesses, you know, they are using their business as their personal checkbook, right?
Yep.
And that's, we talked about this last week, right? Where that makes it a little tough from a evaluative perspective. But in this time when you're kind of considering, I want to sell, it's not just about positioning your books to look good. It's also about, hey, you don't need to invest in certain things. Like you just don't take that on. Worry more about cutting costs. Worry a little bit less about, I need to make myself bigger and better. And man, if you're trying to get out in 6 to 12 months, it's not going to happen that way. So another question. Now this kind of goes back to general value. Obviously we talked about Florida and Florida being, a hotbed, a literal hotbed for the industry. Does geographic location impact valuation? Now I know it impacts it from a perspective of, man, if there's a specific place that PE firms are interested in, like you mentioned Houston. But I'm saying more like,
Sure.
is like for like, is a HVAC company in Kansas going to sell similarly to one in Florida?
No. So here, and I'm going to keep it. This is really simple. So yes, there are. If you've got potential buyers, like we said, that are interested in certain markets, that's going to be a driver. But even more general than that is, it's really based off of population. How many houses are there? How many service contracts do you have? Right? And naturally, you're going to see that in markets that are more populated. So an HVAC company in the middle of Atlanta, Dallas, Orlando, Jacksonville is going to be valued more than a small town, in the middle of Alabama or in Kansas or in Iowa. Doesn't mean there aren't HVAC companies in those states that are going to be highly valued. It's just, it's going to be based off your population and based off your service contracts and based off of your sales. And obviously you're going to have more sales if there's more people to service. So very oversimplified, but it's the honest truth.
Yeah,
Because HVAC across the board, no matter where you are, is important and it's not going away. So the good news is, if you're in a small town of 4,500 people, try to service 3,500 of them, right? Take away that competition. And that's still a really nice service, even though that's a small business. Granted, if I pick that same business up and put it in Orlando, Florida, then you should be, it should grow exponentially because there's just more, more fruit to grab, more people to service. So that's kind of where the breakdown is in terms of multiples. Is it's just based off of how many people you can service. I'll add to, it's also, because we've been talking a lot about PE firms, but let's talk about just someone very general and individual looking to purchase an HVAC company. Are you in a market that is an attractive place for someone to move, right? Because they may not be there. They may relocate for the business. And sunny Naples, Florida might be where they want to be rather than Chicago. Chicago's got a lot more people than Naples. And you're going to see comparable multiples, but it might end up being a better pitch and a better sale in that Naples. So it also just depends on, are you in a place where people want to be? And that is very relative to other people, because other people, all people have different kind of thought processes on where they want to be. But that's another thing, where is your business located, and is it attractive for someone to want to move there?
for sure, for sure. And again, it goes back to, business is worth what someone will pay for it. If they find what you have attractive, whether their interest being mostly in the numbers, their interest mostly being in the geography, their interest mostly being in the actual operation, regardless, there is value that can be derived from your business, right? And the best way to find out what that is to get a valuation.
It's
Best
the
way
first
for
step
you
of
to
the
even,
process. The easiest
that's
thing to
it.
do.
That's it. The best way for you to figure out if you've got something or not is to get a valuation. Now, if your business is doing at least $1.5 million in revenue, and more particularly, if you're doing about $500,000 annually in cash flow, you are a fantastic candidate for us to offer you a valuation at no charge. So we would love to talk with you. We'd love to hear your story. We'd love to hear about what's going on with your business, and we can talk about moving into that valuative process and figuring out what you're worth. I mean, this everything we talked about today it is clear that now is a great time to sell your HVAC business. It's in high demand. It's a highly fragmented industry. It's something that the product itself is in demand, not just the business is in demand. The product itself is in demand, which means that there is an evergreen market. And so this is a great time, whether you're aging out, whether you want to move into the next opportunity. Doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter. But whatever your why, now is the time to take a look at your HVAC business. So if you wanna do that, you can go to our website, robinspellegrino.com. There's a quick form on the homepage you fill out, and then we'll be in touch with you real quick. Everything's under NDA, right? We're very, very careful about the confidentiality of the whole process. No one will know that you are even exploring this route outside of us and anyone else covered by that NDA. And ultimately, we'll figure out what's going on with your business. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Chandler, is there anything that we missed? Anything you feel like we should toss in there when talking about HVAC?
I don't think so, other than every time we talk about HVAC, I think of this same story, and I may have mentioned it previously, but there was a gentleman that I sold a business for 2 or 3 years now, and he was just going to close up his HVAC business. Ultimately, he got about $300,000 for something that he thought didn't have any value. So you never know unless you get the business valuation, right? So I just urge everybody to do that, and then that's a great starting point. It kicks off the conversation, and ultimately, I think there's probably a path forward.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks, Chandler, and thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.